Hello and welcome to the History Taster session. I hope that you enjoyed this insight into some of the activities that we run with our current students. This one is designed by me, Leanne Calvert, and is entitled Swipe Right, Finding a Husband in the Long 18th Century. So this session is on the theme of courtship and the making of marriage. Today, the dating world has been revitalized by the use of technology. Apps such as Tinder mean that we have thousands of potential partners at our fingertips. Whether you actually read someone's profile or not, one look at a profile picture is all that you need. Swipe left or swipe right is the main choice that you have to take. What these apps tell us is that people nowadays have a large degree of independence in who they choose to date. Whether we choose a partner on the basis of looks, whether they have similar hobbies, or even if they have a cute animal in their profile picture. This degree of choice is something that many of us may think is a modern phenomenon. Surely people in the past didn't have the same degree of choice, or did they? That's what we will figure out in this session. So just to introduce myself, my name is Leanne Calvert and I am a lecturer in history based in the School of Humanities. I am a historian of women and the family, and my work focuses on families in Ireland, in England and North America between the 18th and the 19th centuries. This research informs the types of things that I teach in the history group. If you take any modules with me, you may find yourself studying ones such as Hearth and Heart, Family Life in the Long 18th Century, which looks at how ordinary people experienced family life, and you'll study topics such as courtship and marriage, childhood and childbirth, youth and adolescence, and sexuality. You may also take another module with me called Crime and Society in Early Modern England, where you'll hear about crimes such as theft, assault and murder, and also the various ways that people in the early modern period were punished for committing crimes, including hanging. And then I have a new module coming online entitled Sinners, Scoundrels and Deviance, Non-Conformity in the Atlantic World. And this module looks at how the church, the state and the community responded to the differences in sexuality, in race and in lifestyle to create acceptable standards of behaviour. And the types of deviancies that we will explore include things like incest, adultery, homosexuality, and interracial relationships. What I also want to point out at this period of the presentation is that, which you may have already noticed, is that I have a speech impediment. And I point this out just to reiterate to you as a future student and to parents who are perhaps listening at home that when you join us at the University of Hertfordshire, you are joining an academic community that celebrates diversity and difference in all its forms, and one which strives to ensure that all of our students, irrespective of their backgrounds and abilities, reach their full potential. We are an open and a welcoming community, and I do hope that you are here to study with us. So what made women in the 18th century swipe right? The history of dating and relationships is one that has attracted lots of interest from historians. And when lots of historians are interested in something, this inevitably means that there's lots of arguments. Three big questions concern historians here. So firstly, what were the ideal qualities that women looked for in a husband? Secondly, how much freedom did women and men have to choose their potential spouse? And thirdly, how much influence did parents have in the choice of a marriage partner? Now let's think about these three questions for a moment. From watching period dramas and films, many of us will have the impression that people in the past, and particularly women, had very little say over their marriage choices. You may think that marriages were made purely for monetary considerations, for cementing family dynasties, and for establishing political alliances. You may also think that personal inclination, so being able to marry a person because A, you had feelings for them, or B, you thought they were hot in that you were physically attracted to them, were not that important. And you may also think that parents had complete control over who their sons and daughters married. So these types of impressions are the ones that we see in period dramas and films. So usually a daughter who is forced into a marriage with a wealthy older man who's perhaps a bit ugly, who she really doesn't want to marry. And I want you to take this preconception and think about it very critically for the remainder of this presentation. Is this a true reflection of how people in the 18th century chose a marriage partner? The 18th century witnessed a huge increase in advice literature that was aimed at helping people figure out who was the best person that they should marry. That this type of advice exists at all tells us that there was a widespread appetite for help in choosing a potential marriage partner. Conduct books and pamphlets that were aimed at those classes that were able to read and write, so from the middling orders and upwards, were churned out in their masses and gave out to sons and to daughters as birthday presents and as instruction manuals by their tutors. One example of a publication of this type is the one on the slide, and this was devised by John Essex in 1722 and was entitled The Young Lady's Conduct or Rules for Education. Chapter 9 of this publication included some rules for the choice of a husband. And this is a really interesting piece of advice in helping us to think more critically about what made a good husband. What types of qualities should make a woman swipe right? So if we take the first section there, in order to a happy marriage, man and wife should have but one and the same interest. And to make up this, there must be a suitable agreement and harmony in age, humour, education, and religion. So what this paragraph is telling us is that people in the 18th century were urged to choose a partner who was very much a mirror reflection of themselves. That in order for marriages to be happy, partners should try to choose someone of the same age, of the same personality, of the same degree of education and to be of a similar religious background. And this was known as the concept of parity, Parity. And indeed, this idea around choosing a partner of a similar age was a constant feature of advice literature over the period. So the second paragraph here outlines why an equality of age was so important. An equality of age, I think no dispute can arise, for though the naturalists may marry the tender vine to the aged elm, yet to tie a sprightly young lady to an old fellow is such a preposterous conjunction as neither nature, justice, or policy can reconcile. So what the author was doing here was pointing out how ill-matched persons of varied ages were to one another. So they're saying here that young people should not be marrying older people. And when we're thinking about this, this is because the purpose of marriage was to have children. So what the author is pointing out here is, how is this going to work? If you marry a young woman to an old fellow, how would that come across as a happy marriage? How would this couple have anything in common or shared interests? And this would just be laying the groundwork for marital conflict. Now, people who did marry someone of a very different age from them were the subject of ridicule in satirical cartoons and in print, and that's what we will look at on our next slide. So this print is entitled The Ridiculous Match, and it dates to 1768. In the notes of this slide, you can follow through to find out where I got this image from. So this image depicts the marriage of Thomas Peeble, Esquire, who is noted as being aged 90, who is marrying a woman of the age of 16 called Miss Frisky. The choice of their names is obviously deliberate. So he is feeble and she's quite frisky. The people behind the couple are pointing and laughing. And behind them, up on the wall, is a sign that has a skull above it. And it tells about another man who was aged 92, who died of a broken heart a few days after his marriage with a young lady. So these types of satirical prints were put out there to reinforce to anyone who came across them that these types of unequal marriages were completely against societal conventions, and that people who entered into them were subjected to ridicule. But importantly, however, it was not just older men who married younger women who were made fun of, as you'll see in the next slide. So this image dates to 1803 and it's entitled An Advertisement for a Husband. And as you can see, there is an older woman on the right hand side of the image who we know is in a state of advanced age because she's holding an instrument up to her ear in order to be able to hear what the people in front of her are saying. And she's also surrounded by cats. And it's worth pointing out that this history of unmarried women having pet cats has a very long history there. So the men in front of her are lining up to be potential suitors, and the message of this image is that She not only that she only has this element of choice because she has a bit of money. None of the men in front of her want to marry her because they are physically attracted to her, or even because she could produce them an heir, because she's not of an age where this could happen. So these men are only after her for her money or her social status. So this being an advertisement for a husband is a satirical cartoon which is pointing out the idiocy of these types of marriages.
I am a young lass, and my time does so pass, that of late I did long for to marry. I have for my dear 500 a year, and yet for all that I will tarry. I had with a Scot mickle money, I wot, he strutted with rapier and poniard. He is laid with fine lace, but I like not his face, I fear he has lost his whinyard. Then came one from France, who bravely could dance, he is proper in every joint. Yet in his country he scaped well the pea, so well he did cut the cross point. A senior Spaniard is late came o'er, and he thinks that he hath no fellow, as is hot in the rain, and hath got a strain by dancing in a bandello. Then came a Dutchman, can toss well the can, till his head be as light as a feather. The Spaniard had punk, and the Dutchman was drunk, and so they went both together. An Italian came post, and full well he can host, but I like no such fond fellows. If I were his wife, he should lead an ill life, for I do like none so jealous. From Rome one came to me, who daily did woo me. He fasted 3 days in the week. But when prayer's done, if he spy a fair nun, his stomach is wonderful quick. A troublesome Turk did make hasty work, but his suit it was quickly ended. I scorned his belief, and so to be brief, he did return home offended. Then next a brave Dane came marching amain, but I answered him as the rest, that he could not prevail, so he hoist up his sail, for his nose could abide no jest. From Ireland I had a lusty brave lad, each limb was proportioned mighty. Truth was he was poor, yet I gave him more, 'cause his breath stunk of aqua vitae. From Sweetland resorted a man well reported, and he made a proffer to woo me. His neck was so big, and so small was his leg, that since he would never come to me. From Russia likewise in antic disguise one came which did think to obtain me, but his hair and his hood against my mind stood, therefore he shall never gain me. A Grecian one day my love did essay, who standeth at every church door. I never respected, though he me affected, I had rather turn fiddler's whore. An almonrod spied me, and presently tried me, who thought I would yield at the first. But I could not abide he should lie by my side, for some say they are devilish and cursed. From Pole did come hither in summer's hot weather, he strutted and stalked with a grace. So soon as I spied him, I could not abide him, his nose was frozen off on his face. He had a great mind, and was willing inclined, no nation so willing as those. He swore and protested, I jibed and jested, and bade him go get a new nose. A barbarian, a big-bellied man, did proffer to win me for his wife. But I told him this he should surely miss, for I liked not his course of life. From Amsterdam a vile atheist came, he was neither true Dutchman nor Pole. But I do reject all that are of that sect, for I doubt me that hell hath its soul. This base-minded creature doth think that by nature both heaven and earth is made. He thinks there's no hell where atheists must dwell, but my mind he shall not persuade. A gentleman of Wales did tell her fine tales, that he had a house built on a hill, had pig and had goat and green leek in the pot, and could eat good cow's bobby her fill. He would keep me so brave if I would him have, he would buy me a hood and a hat, he would buy me fine hose with garters and rows, and sweetheart, how like you of that? An Englishman came, but I know not his name, and he bravely could quaff it and quarrel. He'll drink till he die, some says, but not I, and sell all his lands for apparel. If I would be his wife, he swore by his life, ere long he would make me a lady. He would sell his old manors to buy him new honours, and that's but the trick of a baby. Now which should I have? Your counsels I crave. If you can but find one will fit me, the best will I take, and amends I'll you make, if Cupid then do not hit me.
So the ballad starts off by introducing us to the rich maid. It begins, I am a young lass, and my time doth so pass, that of late I did long for to marry. I have for my dear 500 a year, and yet for all that I will tarry. So what she's telling us here is that she really wants a husband, that she has a personal fortune of £500 a year. So she is an eligible bachelor. So men should be lining up to ask for her hand in marriage because she has this independent wealth. So the first man to come in front of her is a Scottish man, and I'll read the stanza now. I had with a Scot mickle money, I wot. He strided with rapier and poniard. He is laid with fine lace, but I like not his face. Is fear he has lost his poniard. Now this is a really interesting paragraph. So first of all, her impressions of the Scottish man is that he's quite flashy. He's strutting about with a rapier and a poniard, which were words that mean a small sword and a tiger. He's also dressed in finery, including lace, but he is not suitable because he's quite ugly. She likes not his face. It's also worth pointing out that these references to swords and tigers, and in the final line where it says Bunyard, are also perhaps a veiled reference to his virility and potency as a man. So she's drawing a comparison between these pointy objects and his manhood. So that's a Scottish man is done. So the next guy comes up is a Spanish man. A Senor Spanior is late come o'er, and he thinks that he hath no fellow, as is hot in the rain, and hath got a strain by dancing in a bandello. So the Spanish man is quite a good prancer and he likes to prance about. However, he is unsuitable because he has a bad temper. The next man is a Dutchman. So then came a Dutchman, can touse well they can, till his head be as light as a feather. The Spaniards had punk and the Dutchman was drunk, and so they both went off together. So what do you think is wrong with the Dutchman? Well, he likes his alcohol far too much, and he drank that much that his head was as light as a feather. So he's out, because we don't want a man who drinks too much. The next man was an Italian man. An Italian can post, and full well he can host, but I like no such fond fellows. If I were his wife, he should lead an ill life, for I do like none so trellis. So he's out because he is too trellis, and she wants to lead a happy life. Let's skip down to the Irishman. As an Irish person myself, this is one of my favourite stanzas. From Ireland I had a lusty brave lad, each limb was proportioned mighty. Truth was he was poor, yet I gave him o'er, 'cause his breath stunk of aquavity. So this Irishman is quite handsome, even though he doesn't have a lot of money. His good looks make up for it. But the reason why he's out is because his breath smells of alcohol. That's what aquavity is. So on the plus side, he's good looking. On the negative side, he's too fond of his alcohol, so he's out. We can't swipe right on the Irishman. Then we have a man from Sweden. From Sweden resorted a man well reported, and he made a proffer to woe me. His neck was so big and so small was his legs, that hence he would never come to me. So the guy from Sweden is out of proportion. He had a big neck, but he had small legs. And in this period, men's legs were thought to be the most attractive part of them. So this man is out of proportion, so we do not swipe right on him. And then finally here, there's a man from Russia. So from Russia, likewise, in antique disguise, one came which did think to obtain me, but his hair and his hood against my mind stood, therefore he shall never ken me. So the main problem with the guy from Russia is that she wasn't physically attracted to him, so she won't swipe right on him either. So what I hope you get from a sense of the ballad is how important physical attraction and personal inclination was to the maid. Feel free to go through the rest of the ballad on your own, and she goes through men from all other parts of the world and ticks off their good points and their bad points, affording us a really interesting insight into what would make a woman in her position swipe right. So what are the key things I hope that you are able to take away from this session? Well, first of all, people who lived in this time period swiped right for many different reasons. Women, like the woman in the ballad, felt that physical and sexual attraction were very important in the choice of a potential partner. They wanted a partner not only who they were physically attracted to, but also who they were well matched with in terms of their personality and also their humour. Because the maid did not want to marry a man who was ill-tempered, and she also did not want to marry a man who was trellis. Secondly, physical and sexual attraction as well as money were important factors, and how important each of these factors were depended on an individual themselves. As you saw in the Ballad of the Wealthy Maid, even though the Irishman hadn't any money, this was not the overriding factor in his dismissal. That was his alcohol consumption. And then finally, individual agency in courtship and marriage. So for some women, like the wealthy maid, they were able to exercise a large degree of agency in their choice of marriage partner. It was entirely up to her who it was that she married. The types of conduct literature and advice that were produced over the period also tell us that contemporaries were very concerned to marry the right partner, and that they really believed the partners should be equal in terms of their ages, their personalities, their religious background, and their values. And what I hope that you take away from this today is that these preconceptions that we have about people in this period, that they were forced to marry old and ugly men against their will, is not a complete reflection of the reasons why people swiped right in the 18th century. So far, the types of sources that we've been looking at when thinking about courtship and marriage have been focusing on those sections of society who were able to read or write. So those satirical cartoons were depicting the marriages of persons from the middling orders and upwards. And the conduct literature is written for an educated audience. But is there any way in which we can find out how ordinary women and men try to choose a partner? What made ordinary women swipe right? One type of source material that can allow us some insight into these questions is the use of ballads. And I use these quite a lot in my classes with students, and they're so much fun. So the great thing about a ballad is that not only have we got the written records of them, but these were sources and source materials that were also orally construed. Ballads were sung in the pub, in people's houses, and out in the street, and are therefore a source that we can conclude that ordinary people would have heard or even sang along to, and therefore it gives us a remarkable insight into their attitudes. So the one on the slide here dates to 1620, and it's entitled A Merry Ballad of a Rich Maid that had 18 several suitors. And this is one of my favourite ballads, and it tells the story of a wealthy maid who has 18 men come in front of her and ask for her hand in marriage. And she goes through each and picks out reasons why they are not a suitable partner. And what this ballad really brings to the fore is how important other factors, such as physical attraction, were for women in the long 18th century. Now, if you can see on the slide there is the icon there, which will play the entire ballad for you if you want to hear what it sounds like. It lasts about 5 minutes, so the option is there if you would like to hear it. I tend to play this in class, and students and myself do tend to enjoy them very much. But what we'll do on the next slide is go through a couple of the stanzas of the ballad and work out what would make this rich maid swipe right.